So Chuggy, my man, so good to see you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks for taking some time to hang out with me.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's so many things I'd love to talk to you about. But maybe a good place to start is how your passion for music developed. Did you have a lot of music in your house when you were a kid?
Well, my mother, she had jazz albums, and I used to, when I finally got a stereo system, I used to play her records. Yeah, you know, because I mean, I grew up listening to Motown, and I'm from Harlem, and so I used to be one of those kids on the line that used to be out there waiting for James Brown to play one of his shows, which went around the block, a whole city block. And I also, you know, I would go see plenty of shows there. I saw everybody, you know, Patti LaBelle, when, you know, singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, you know. I was like 12. My mother took me to see, she went to see Gloria Lynn, right? The opening act was Little Stevie Wonder. And the one thing I remembered was Gloria Lynn, the letters on the marquee, Gloria Lynn's letters were this big, and Little Stevie Wonder this big. And,
hey, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. But years later, ironically, I worked for a guy named Teruo Nakamura, and he had an office on Fifth Avenue, and we were producing shows at the South Street Seaport, and Gloria Lynn was one of the acts, and so I was able to, you know, I was working in the office, and I was able to talk to her and tell her that story about me seeing her and her letters being this big. It was awesome, man.
Cool.
She was great too. She was great.
So
But
what was the first instrument you played?
I was a tap dancer.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, from the time I could like walk, I was interested in drums, but my mother was a single parent, and we lived in Manhattan, and she wasn't going to buy a drum set to have me driving the neighbors crazy. And so I said, well, what about piano? So anyway, she wanted to get me involved in something because she saw I had a passion for music. So she got me enrolled into a dance school, and I took tap, which, you know, I had to go on Saturdays, and I wanted to play baseball, and yeah, you know, and what I didn't realize was my timing and everything was being developed through the tap dancing, you know. And when I look back on it, you know, and then after seeing all the great tap dancers like Sammy Davis Jr. and even Savion Glover, you know, is how they tapped, and they tapped with percussionists and whatnot. It made sense to me that, you know, that's when my rhythm was developed back then.
Right, and Sammy, I mean, a great drummer.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people don't know that.
Oh no, he was just a talented individual. But I mean, he started at 3 years old, you know.
That helps, right?
Yeah, that helps. It does help.
You don't know anything else.
Yeah. You don't have any preconceptions, and,
Right.
you know. It's that's what I am a percussionist for a program called Music Together, which is out of Hopewell, New Jersey, and it's an international company. This gentleman named Ken Gilmartin, and what it is it presents music and movement to preschoolers. And how I got involved with that was when my daughter was born, and she started to, you know, get into movement and stuff. I would go, and what it is the parent goes with the child and performs, you know, with the child, and it was really good. So anyway, I met the guy who was the founder of it, and Ken Gilmartin, and he found out I was a musician, so he had me record, because he did a lot of merchandising with CDs and whatnot. So I'm like the Music Together percussionist, and I've done like the stick CD and the drum and the tambourine, so on and so forth, Marcos. And it was a great experience. And but I love it when I play and these preschoolers come and they look at me like I'm a rock star, you know. I said, this is one of my fans right there.
Well, it's so great. I mean, probably a ton of people you would attribute to helping you with your career, and inspiring you, and it's wonderful to do the same thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's where it comes from. I think music, right today, music lies with the children, you know, because I think that we kind of got away from playing music, you know. I mean, not to take anything away from the genre of rap and whatnot, but kids technology has made it so kids can push buttons and they can sound like Bernard Purdy. You know, but I've run into a bunch of kids, high schoolers that went to school with my daughter and whatnot, who are passionate about music, and they're actually playing instruments, which is, you know, I mean, and I think, like, one thing, I worked with Patti LaBelle, and she taught me the meaning of what goes around comes around, and I think that it's coming around again, you know, and the kids of today are starting to, you know, play more music as opposed to just, you know, taking what someone else has already done and marketing it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Patti LaBelle, can you talk a little bit about some of what you thought were some of the highlights of your career as far as...
Well, the two basic highlights was Donny Hathaway gave me my first break in the music business, and he took me on the road with George Weins' Newport Jazz Festivals, and we went out, and I learned a lot, and I was hanging out with, like, people that I idolized. I mean, you know, my first show was in Newport News, Virginia, in front of 39,000 people, and B.B. King was on it, the Staple Singers, Rashawn, Roland Kirk. It was incredible. It was like, and I'm backstage hanging out. I was like, this is really great. And Donnie was instrumental in like I said, he gave me a break. He saw something in me, I guess, personality, you know, because I was, you know, I was a novice at that time, and he called me up. I was working at a rehearsal studio in New York, and I had a band, and I took the job so that we could pay $5 an hour instead of $15 an hour for rehearsal time. And Donnie called me at the studio because a friend of mine named John Suswell, became Donnie's drummer. And he told Donnie that I was an available percussionist. So Donnie called me up to come audition at Atlantic Records. Yeah, in Bernard Purdy's office. You know, and I didn't really, you know, at that time, I didn't even know, to be honest with you, I didn't know who Donny Hathaway was, or Bernard, you know. And it just opened a lot of doors for me. And then later on, that same studio that I worked at, Patti LaBelle used to rehearse there. And when I had block time, my boss canceled all my duties, and my duties was to be the gopher for them. So I was in the studio, and it was at a time when Patti was pregnant, and she was getting ready to do a show at Carnegie Hall, and she was also doing an album, and Stevie Wonder was producing the album. So Stevie was there, and again, my Stevie Wonder. I mean, he was a big inspiration in getting me started, and it was when I saw him play, and he didn't just play piano. I mean, he played bongos, bass, harmonica, drums, and he was blind. I said, Mom, I want to do that. You know, so he was a big inspiration. And Patti, like I said, Donnie, Patti. Some of the highlights was my first gig with Patti LaBelle was at the Metropolitan Opera House, and that's something that, you know, a lot of people can't say that they played at the Metropolitan, but it was one of the best shows. I mean, I enjoyed the show on stage as much as the people in the audience, because the sound in that place was incredible. and we had a great sound company, Weisberg Sound, that did the sound, and it was it's just an unbelievable night.
What were you playing for that gig?
What instruments? Oh, percussion, congas and various toys, which is
toys.
yeah.
Did you have a setup by that point of your toys?
No, I didn't actually. I had a couple of things.
Yeah.
I had a gong because they big gong and a bell tree,
Okay.
a couple of shakers, but it was more conga, cowbell, of course,
Yeah.
more cowbell.
And Latin percussion stuff, right? Were you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, that's my forte. I'm more of a Latin percussionist as opposed to a trap. I mean, though I do attempt to play traps. I just recently did a thing with Melvin Van Peebles. We did two shows in New York, and I played drums.
Nice.
It was like being around Jackie Robinson. This guy's like historical figures, and I got a chance to meet them, so that.
That's great.
Oh,
And
man.
play with them.
And play with them.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate and blessed through my friend Worrell Nakamura. He's taken me to Japan, and he's had me play with. Well, that's how I met Jon. Jon Hammond. Teru was producing a record on Barry Finity, and Jon was Barry's friend, and I met all of them around the same time, and I got to play on Barry's record. But Teru had me play with, he had an all-star band that we used to go over to Japan with, and some of the names of the people in the band were like, Hubert Laws and Stanley Turrentine and Michael Urbaniak, and the list just goes, Victor Jones, Barry Finity. I mean, it was just incredible, and I've done it a few times, Worrell Nakamura is another guy I owe a lot to, because he exposed me to, some things that little guy from Harlem wouldn't get to see. But, the passion, I've always been passionate about music, and I never wanted a job. You know what I mean? I always wanted to just play, and I got enjoyment out of performing, I mean, there's a lot of guys, I know a lot of guys that were in the studios and whatnot. Most of the groups that I played with, they took me away from the New York scene and I went out on the road, so I wasn't, in the different cliques that were there. Though I knew a lot of people in the different cliques and played with them, but I never really got into the scene, so to speak.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up Donny, because I don't know what it is, but ever since I was a kid, I had this feeling about him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe a lot of people did. That's why he was who he was, I guess. But I would love to have you talk a little bit about him, maybe a little bit of his background that you know of,
Okay.
and what it was like working with him.
Well, Donny started at a young age. I think he was 3 years old, and he used to play ukulele while his grandmother sang gospel, and he was called, I think, Little Donny Potts. I think this is what it was, and he's from St. Louis, but I believe he was raised in Chicago, and Donny Hathaway was a musical genius. I mean, I'm talking Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. I mean, he was on that level musically, but he because of that, he had a lot of depression, and I mean, I don't know exactly what caused his depression, but he had incredible stuff. I mean, when I worked with him, after he gave me the job, which like I said, it had to be my personality, because there was so many great percussionists at that time. We went out on the weekends, and I was home most of the week, and I was still living at home with my mom. So I used to go to Donnie's apartment at 1 Lincoln Plaza and just hang out with him. He had a grand piano, a baby grand, and a waterfall in his living room. And it was, I think, 1 bedroom or studio. And he was writing an opera called Life, parts 1 through whatever, 4, 1 through 5. And he had scored the whole piece. And I didn't know how to read music. So he would show me how to read music. I mean, he broke everything down for me. And then he would play the parts. And I truly, I mean, it was just me, him, the waterfall, and the piano, but I heard timpanis and strings and piccolos. I mean, it was kind of scary at first, you know. And then, but Donnie he was an incredible individual. I mean, he was my friend, you know. And it was very sad what happened to him, and I don't really know what happened to him. But about a month before he died, he called me up and said he was coming to New York and he was going to put me on a record. And he had taken me in the studio, and I recorded with him and Grady Tate, David Spinoza, and Ron Carter, you know. And it was at the power plant in New York, and I'll never forget that day. I was in the studio, and I'm playing the cabasa inside, and I was playing a cabasa and something else, and the engineer couldn't see me. And he was like, "How is he doing that?" And I'm in there saying, "What am I doing here?" You know, and I was there because Donnie, you know, he saw something in me that you know, and he used me, and he was real good to me. I mean, like I said, he was a troubled individual, but he was an immense talent, you know. And it was a great loss to him. And I don't know. I every time I hear the song "Someday We'll All Be Free," I get teary-eyed. I get teary-eyed. He's free now, so.
I just think, you know, that old saying about what a genius is. A genius is somebody who has an output for which there is no explanation. You know, other than his passion and his love, how do you explain something like the ghetto, right? I mean, how do you explain something, a song for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness.
Yeah. Well, that was actually Leon Russell. But I mean, I think they collaborated on it. Yeah.
I mean, that to me is genius.
Yes, it is. I mean,
and I didn't even name half of them.
Oh.
You know, I mean, that's just the first 2
that come to mind. Yeah, and those are some powerful songs. And, yeah, he was man, he was something.
And musically, I think that's the point. You know, like take the lyrics away from Ghetto. Just listen to the music. I mean, what was he doing? It's crazy.
The pianos. You have to listen to the piano solos on like he did on like what's going on. He did a version of his piano playing was I mean, he played with the same dexterity that he sang. It was just unbelievable. I mean, I had never, and even to this day, I haven't seen anybody that can do what he did. I mean, his both hands were totally independent, and he was singing at the same time. It's just. One story is we had a gig, and the bass player didn't make it to the stage, so he played the bass with it. It was.
That's on a different level.
Yeah, different level. I mean, I had a lot of respect for the man, and I wish he was still with us, but you know, it's life is what it is, and there's a meaning for it. I'm glad that he came into my life because he definitely made a difference for me. You know, I mean, all the people I met people. It's incredible. Again, like, I got a list of names of people that are just, I consider friends of mine or acquaintances because I had one time or another was put on a record and did a chart and met them, you know, and it's like today when I got here, first person I see is Chuck Rainey, and I saw Chuck I was with Chuck and Bernard out in Anaheim in 2015, yeah, and that was a treat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Well, another friend is Jon Hammond. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about that crazy guy.
Jon Hammond is like I say, Jon Hammond to me is the Joe Franklin of the music business. I mean, he's a excellent musician, but he's a multimedia guy. I mean, he has a cable TV show, he does radio show, he's all over the place. I mean, he's at all the NAMM shows, and he's constantly interviewing people, you know, from not just music. It's like from all walks of life, you know. And he does he's unbelievable. He let me play with him in 1989 at a club in New York called McKell's, and that was with Bernard on drums, Barry Finity on guitar, Alex Forster on sax, and of course John. And then we had other people, Andy Snitzer, and there was a few other people that sat in. Oh, one night Cornell Dupree, I got to play with Cornell. And then Cornell, you know, when he found out that I played with Donny, like because he loved Donny, he loved Donny, and Bernard, and
I think Bernard played with him too, didn't he?
Bernard and Donny were great friends. Oh yeah, like I said, I auditioned for Donny Hathaway in Bernard's office at Atlantic Records. You know, so they go back that far. That was like in the 70s, the early 70s. And yeah, he loved Donny's music, and you know, we've had conversations about Donny. I mean, he had, you know, strong feelings for Donny. Donny was a good guy. It was just, you know, Donny didn't think he was a jazz musician. I mean, we did all those jazz festivals, and I mean, we did Fenway Park, Mile High Stadium. I mean, George Wein took it on the road, and we went with it. Nassau Coliseum. My mother got to see me play at Nassau Coliseum, and with Donny, Tito Puente, Aretha Franklin, and Ray Charles. That was the bill. Unbelievable. But
He didn't think himself as a jazz musician.
no, he thought that he had to. He didn't realize, I don't think, that he was respected by his peers. You know, I mean, because I guess he wanted to do meaningful music, and the powers that, you know, I'm not gonna say controlled him, but you know, the business people, they wanted him to produce and
And make money.
yeah, and he wanted to do some meaningful music and play, and so there was a lot of stuff that he was doing that he didn't really approve of, whereas the record companies would have taken it just because of the people that he had playing on it, you know. I did an interview with a French writer who did the liner notes for a 4 CD set that was released in France. Warner Brothers France released it. And I did an interview with this Joachim Bertrand, who writes for a jazz magazine in France. And he was doing a liner works for this 4 CD set called Someday We'll All Be Free. And he got some songs from Warner Brothers that nobody knew who was playing on them. So he sent me the MP3 files. He says, look, don't let anybody know that, you know, but have you ever heard this? And it was the stuff that I did at the record plant with Ron Carter and Grady Tate and David Spinoza. And I was like, oh yeah, I know these songs. Yeah, I'm playing on them. You know, so Joachim, we did the interview, and then they put on the record. They didn't put the people's names. They just put demos for the particular songs. And then Joaquin came to New York and came to my house, and we broke bread and talked, and that was really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Well, one of the horrible elements of suicide, of course, is that feeling that the rest of us have, that person didn't know they were loved or didn't have that sense that they were appreciated. Do you think that was the case with Donny?
I think that was part of it. Yes, I think how they were treating his depression or his illness was wrong. Instead of treating the cause, they just treated, gave him whatever chemicals that they did because he was chemically imbalanced, and they just gave him whatever they do to level him out so he could function in society. But I don't think they really, got to the root of what his problem was, and I think that was the cause of his demise. I really don't know whether he committed suicide.
Oh, really?
Personally, I mean that's a personal feeling. A lot of people said that he did because he had a book on a piano. There was a picture, and he had a book about suicide on the piano. If anything, I think he fell out the window, because Donny used to like to sing in the room, and to not disturb the guests, he would open the windows. And he was at the Essex House, and Central Park is right there. So he'd open the windows and sing out to Central Park. And he might have been medicated and, was singing, and the windowsills are low. And once you fall out the window, you can't come back in. So I don't know. I just had a bad feeling about the whole thing. I mean, I don't think there was foul play, so to speak, but I don't think it was suicide. But it's going to go down in history as a suicide, because he was, chemically imbalanced and self-medicating, and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, whatever it was, we all had a loss.
Yes,
right?
Great loss.
I mean, what was that day like? It was like weird, right?
Yeah, because I had just talked to him, about a month before. And he was actually going to come, and I'm assuming that from what he said to me, because he called me at my home in New York, and I wasn't working with him at that time, and I hadn't heard from him in a while, and he said, "I'm coming to New York, and I'm going to put you on the record." So, why would somebody like that, if he was going to do something like that, in his life? But I don't know. Because I've had a few friends that situation has happened, and there was always a question mark as to, did they commit suicide, or was it something else? And when in knowing the people, or thinking that I know the people, I don't think it was. But
It's hard to confuse.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
Oh,
I mean, I love that guy. I mean, I was just playing some of his music the other day, and I thought, who else do you want to listen to a Christmas song in June? Him, right?
that Christmas song, we played that live.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah. I'll never forget when we were learning that song. I mean, I was like, wow, this is great. One day I was in art supply store, and it was around Christmas time, and they were playing that song, but it was everybody's version of it. Christina Aguilera did it. Harry Connick Jr. He was in an interview. He did that song, and the interviewer said to him, "Oh, so your new song this Christmas," and Harry stopped him at that point. He says, "No, that song was written by Donny Hathaway." I was like, yeah. Yeah.
Give the props.
Give the props with it, yeah. Because that's another thing. After he died, You know, it was like, I mean, usually when people die, like Hendrix, you know, or even Brian Jones, I mean, their music, you know, you would hear their music playing. There was nothing. After Donny died, they didn't play any of his music. It wasn't until years later that a younger audience that weren't even alive when Donny Hathaway was playing music, but they used to listen to their parents' records. You know, there was a Donny Hathaway Facebook page, and all these people, like I said, were like, you know, making comments about Donny Hathaway, and they didn't even, you know, weren't even alive when he was alive. I was like, man, that is incredible. He touched so many people, and he wasn't even here. You know, I was playing in New York, and with some people from the Lion King who had an event called Lights Out on Broadway, and for a year we played right on 42nd Street and 8th Avenue, and so we had cast from The Color Purple, cast from the Lion King, you know, all different plays, and there was one guy sing, and I mean, so many talented people. It's just unbelievable. And we had it was like an open mic for industry people. I guess you'd call that a curative open mic. Anyway, this one guy who I thought was an excellent singer, you know, and he sang, and I think we did a Hathaway song. And then after the song, you know, I says, oh man, that was a great song. And I says, yeah, I played that with Donny Hathaway. And this guy, his whole opinion of me, when he found out that I played with Donny Hathaway, he was like, man, I idolized Donny. You played with Donny Hathaway? And it went on. Oh, and here's this guy. This guy's on Broadway. He was in the Wiz when they had he was one of the Munchkins.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was one of the Munchkins. Oops, knocked that off. Yeah, but Donny's music was incredible, and his daughter is she's like the female version. You know? I've never met her. I mean, when I played with Donny, she was like 2 years old, but she is fantastic. She is fantastic. Oh yeah, she's fantastic.
So what's it like for you playing the NAMM show?
Wow. Anytime I play music, it's because this is what I love to do. Jon had been inviting me for years to go, and I just couldn't afford to get out to California. Well, in 2015, I went to Anaheim and I played, and when I showed up, Purdy sat in with us because he wasn't slated to play with us. And he came out, he sat in with us, and that was a treat. I love this. I mean, because like I said, I get to come here and I get to see people that that are in the industry, and I get to see them like face to face, and you get a better feel on what people are like, I mean, I've met a lot of people in this industry, and people are definitely, it's fun. I mean, when I was with LaBelle, I met Elton John, Cher, I mean, when you meet these people and you see what they're really like, it's just very interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's fun. I met Dinah Shore, and when I was a kid, I used to watch Dinah Shore with my grandmother every Saturday, and when I met Dinah Shore, she came up, after we played, she walked up to me and started talking to me. I almost melted. I was like, my grandmother is going to raise up out of her grave because her grandson is talking to Dinah Shore. What a beautiful woman. Oh, it's just, I love it. I mean, the industry, the business part of it is one thing, but the art and I mean, that's what I thrive for. I like to perform. I mean, like I said before, I really wasn't looking for a job, I was looking to actually be out there playing and being in front of people, and that's my favorite thing, and that's what I like about the NAMM show. I mean, I'm here, I'm talking to you, And tonight I'm going to play at Hammond party, and then tomorrow I'll be on the center stage here at the NAMM show. And then my next bucket list is to get to Germany. And I'd like to do that. I don't know if, huh?
The Frankfurt show, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Hang out with Jon. He'll probably make that happen.
Yeah, this is why.
That guy knows everybody.
Yeah, Jon is. Yeah, well, Jon, like I said, if I'm going to get there, he's the guy. You know, because I mean, I wouldn't. If it wasn't for Jon, I wouldn't have done Anaheim, and I wouldn't have done this. I mean, he's really been really helpful, and he set this up. You know, because you know I've always telling him stories, and I says I got stories because I've been around and you know, I'm not a spring chicken, so. But there's so many stories. There's so many people.
One of the things I'd love to glean from you, speaking of stories, is some of your perspective on the gear a percussionist plays. Do you have things to share about what you play and maybe even some things that have been developed during your career?
Okay.
That, you know, all of a sudden they came around. It's like, oh, this is a much better way of doing this, or new sounds that have been created. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I got into electronics. I went to school in one of my hiatuses and studied computers because I wanted to know how to work computers. So I got my A+ certification in computer technology, and then I started, you know, working with MIDI, and then I worked at Sam Ash, you know, and I found that that was all about retail, had nothing to do with the music, really. But I got to meet a lot of the people that made the equipment. Like I started out in the keyboard department, even though I was a drummer. But the Bobby Colonna was my he's the general manager of the New York store now, but back then he was in Edison, and he hired me. And he hired me because he liked my smile. You know, that's what he told me anyway. And I said, okay, I'll go with that. But and then eventually I got into the drum department, and my boss was Tim Shahady. Yeah. So I love the technology, where it's come. I mean, I used to own the original DX7, and I mean, I'm not really a keyboard player, but I used to fool around with it. And when you look at, and through my friend Teruo Nakamura, I met the people who designed the, you know, all that. So, you know, when I went to Japan, I got to go to Yamaha, and I met Hagiwara, he's retired now, but he was like the head of guitar and drum planning for Yamaha, and he took me to the plant where they make the top of the line drums, and I spent the day there with him. It's incredible. As far as this, like what I do, there's a lot of percussion out there, but I think the progression of the conga kind of stopped. You know, I mean, you had like before the embargoes, you had guys making congas from all over, and you know, and then once there was the embargo, Martin Cohen came with LP, and he developed, you know, the conga. I liked his fiberglass idea, and I adjusted my drums to what I found was, if you're going to use a synthetic material as the drum, you should use a synthetic head. So I use Remo synthetic heads with my LP fiberglass congas, and then I use animal skins on my wood drums. And the wood drums have a much warmer tone, but the plastic drums, I call them, are great, especially when I play with rock bands, because rock bands play really loud. But I find that the fiberglass cuts cuts through if you have the proper head on it. Like a lot of the fiberglass drums with skin head, it's okay because, you know, the players like the feel of the skin heads. But I really like in particular, the Remo new skin. I found you know, that combination, the fiberglass shell with the new skin head, and it's, you don't have to worry about the weather conditions. And, as far as tuning it, you don't have to detune it after you play it. I mean, the skin would last longer, but you don't have to do that. Whereas with the wood drum, you do. At least I do. You know, I mean, that's what I was taught. I was taught by a Cuban who was a percussion builder, by the way. His name was Papo de Diego. He made Jopa percussion, and I used to work at his shop, and he kind of took. Again, I met him at that same rehearsal studio in New York, Talent Recon Dynamite Studios, which later became the Daily Planet. And
Where was his shop?
who's Papo's?
Yeah.
In Brooklyn.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, it was in Marine Park.
Oh, okay.
In Marine Park, Brooklyn. And then he sold that, and he bought a 17-acre farm in Pennsylvania Dutch country, where he lived until he passed away in 2012. You know, which was a sad day for me because he put me on the map. I mean, he took me under his wing. I was kind of his apprentice, and I don't know if you know who Papo was. Papo was the guy who played the original version of Turn the Beat Around. I would like to hear percussion. He played the original solo on Vicky Sue Robbins' version of it, you know. And but he didn't get credit for it because he played on the 45, and there was a different conga player on the album. So he really didn't get credit for that, but that was him playing that solo, and he was a character. He used to do a lot of jingles, and in New York, and he came to at one of my rehearsals for the band that I was rehearsing with at the studio. He came in looking for me one day, and said, "You mind if I sit down and listen?" I said, "No," you know. So then after the rehearsal, and I was bleeding all over the congas, he came over to me. He says, "You know, you make a great drummer." He says, "But you're not hitting those things right." I says, "Well, this is you know, I'm passionate, and I want to do this, so you know." He says, "Well, I have a place in Brooklyn, and blah 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 blah." He says, "But why I'm here to see you is I do jingles, and I go east side, west side, and I need a place to store drums on the west side, and they told me that you're the guy to see." So I helped him out, and I had a room there, and he stored his drums there. And then when I got the gig with Donny Hathaway, I was like, oh, you know, he should really get the gig, you know. So I went to him, and he said, "Well, bring me a tape of like the rehearsals and whatnot." And then he sat down with me, and we went over the songs, and he showed me what to play, you know. I mean, because I was still like a novice as far as playing. I mean, I had energy. I was young, and I had personality. But he showed me how I could get around it, and I did that. Went out on the road, and it worked. And when I came off the road, I went back to his shop and you know, sat down with him, and I would like pick him up. He worked at Con Edison during the day, and I would pick him up, and then we would go out to the shop and eat, and then make instruments. I was cleaning all the stuff, and then we would eat, and then he would take me downstairs and show me the roots, you know. Told me, he said 72% of the Latin populations can play these things, so you need to practice.
Little motivation.
Yeah, little motivation. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
He was great.
Great. Thank you so much
Hey.
for taking so much time for
Dan,
us.
yeah, Dan. I love it. I'm glad you know, glad I didn't mess it up, you know, by not getting back in touch with you. Because John was like, you gotta make sure. Yes, sir.
Kelly,
Yes, sir.
He keeps us all in line.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a good guy, though.
Chuggy, thank you so much.
Hey.
What a pleasure, man. Appreciate it.
Made a new friend.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You grabbed that.
Yep.
Oh, that's
We'll
great.
come with that stuff.
That was good, huh?
That's great.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, so much.
Can I come get you to warm up this seat, Chuggy, for just a second? Come on. I got a little material, or at least one for you to kind of, this one right here. So you can fill out for me if you wouldn't mind. So basically what I need you to do is fill out and listen